Just a little bit about myself. As Michelle has said, that I garden out of a small space. I started out gardening actually because of my cousin. I started picking up a shovel and started digging and correcting the slope, and there was like this patio garden. It's just roughly about 300 square feet. And so I spent the next 6 months just kind of putting pavers and raised beds, stuff like that down, and I started growing culinary herbs. And I've always had this love for the rare, and it just made the most sense to me growing in a small space. I have to get something, to grow something that I can't find just going to the grocery store. So that's how I got started growing, but then it was because of my dog that I was doing a little bit more like cooked food for her, and so I wanted to supplement a little bit of the ingredients by growing myself, and especially medicinal herbs, as we kind of go through life and see that there's different health issues with her, with my loved ones, my dad, things like that. And that's how I got into growing medicinal herbs. So when I got started, this is how it looked when it got finished. That's my dog Lotus. Kind of kept it really simple because I didn't want her feet to get dirty. And so it's just some herbs you can see there, and there's more sun until I start putting more plants in, but you can see it basically growing out of like an alleyway, really. So in the winter, there's almost no sun. It's like going out there at 5 a.m. even though it's like 10 or 11 a.m. and it feels like a refrigerator. So that's why I have to start supplementing growing a little bit indoors. So this space looked like that, and then it kind of looked like that because I started adding some greens, medicinal herbs, and started thinking, hey, maybe I need to do some trellising because that's the only way to kind of maximize my growing space. And that's how I started getting a little more creative. And I think sometimes being in a difficult situation presents opportunities for you to be creative and try to solve problems. So then it started looking like this. I added some more, and then I had to add taller raised beds because in the winter I really just get like this much space, like a 2 square feet space for like 2 to 3 hours of sun. And I started looking like this, and this is what you see from the outside. I've got some purple ube yam growing, different things. Just when you look down, it's actually just like this very like narrow alleyway. And that's when I started to have to think I have to look into more types of plants that would do well in low light settings. And let's just backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about overwintering your plants, since I think your first frost date is coming up soon. So yeah, although I think it's a lot of fun to, start all over every season, you get to start your garden brand new, dream about it again every year. But there are some plants that I think it's worth keeping, and so you don't have to start over because they're slower growing, like peppers or, your eggplants or lemongrass, different types of herbs that would actually respond well when you cut them back. Usually, depends if you're comfortable with cutting back half, like 50%, or maybe just keeping the plant about 1/3 of its size. And you just bring it inside the house. Hopefully find the brightest space possible, south-facing or southwest-facing window. Or if you have a grow light, that's even better. And so the idea of this is to just, or you can, cut them back and dig those plants back up. And it's impossible to do that to every single plant you have. But maybe certain ones you feel like, I don't want to really start over or get a head start. And then you can do almost like succession planting, starting some from seeds, but like a few really special plants you want to maintain and to continue on growing, you can take it inside. That way you can also have a really more compact plant that's just going to produce more, and the plants that respond well with like new growth, that would be really good for them. Say like, rosemary or aloe vera. Aloe vera is so hardy, you can even leave it in the dark for months and it'll be fine. So you don't need anything special just to grow it inside. Take it outside when it's warm out. Moringa, one of my other favorite leafy greens. And this one is, it's packed with nutrients. Some people even dry them, powderize them, put them in little capsules and have them as multivitamins. And this one, it's an amazing plant, but it's really slow to start them from seed. So this one even for me, like I grew up out of California and I'm in Zone 10, Southern California. Moringas are sensitive to the cold. But as long as you protect the rootstock, they will sprout again. You can cut them back, even if the tree was 10 feet. You cut it all the way back down, it would just have new growth. So you can treat this tree as a container plant. Put in a 5-gallon pot. I've seen in Asia, people are growing on the rooftops or on the balcony. They just have multiple 5-gallon pots of moringa growing. They treat it as a vegetable. It's not a tree. They just grow it to maybe like 3 feet tall, and they just keep clipping away like they're vegetables. So you can kind of grow it that way. And especially, I have the dwarf variety too. I know Baker King has a dwarf variety. So picking something more compact, dwarf, for container gardens that would help them thrive better and adapt better to a container. So moringa, I think it's really worth growing overwintering. Now basil, you can do that, apply the same rules to it, but I really think it's better to do like basils as clippings, just propagate them by taking the cuttings as stems, just because basil is one of those plants that are really sensitive, I think, like to the season. I don't know if you ever tried just bringing those plants home from the grocery store. Basil seems to be, they rot and they die when I put it inside or take it outside just because they haven't hardened off. And I notice the same difference when I'm growing things from seed, like say kale. If I start planting kale in the winter, they would fold so quickly in the summer because the time they're growing up is during the cold season. So when I start something like kale or cruciferous vegetables that actually thrive more in the cooler time, if I start the seeds during the warmer time, they would actually thrive they'll go through that warm season and they'll continue on for winter, at least for me, because it doesn't freeze over. But yeah, so if you guys haven't tried propagating through cuttings, you really should, because it buys you time. You don't have to start them from seed, and also they will be the clone, the same as the other plants. And I'm sure some of you guys have tried, just either leftover shallots and green onions or onions that kind of bulbs, and those kind of fun projects you can have on the windowsill. So you just cut a few inches of them, like say your basil or your rosemaries or some sort of other herbs would do really well with these. And you can snip off the top part. That would really help stimulate the growth and help them root faster, encourage root growth. And just sit them in water. Once they root, you can pot them. And I really like to use more fluffy potting mix. Like, don't go out and dig out of your garden, soil for that. That's not going to respond well. It's going to cause a lot of gnats, and just fungus gnats, and it needs good aeration. So that pretty much applies to all indoor gardening. I would say look for an organic potting mix that would say it's also indoor friendly. And the key points, I think, to this for preventing any kind of fungus disease would be to bottom water. So always have a saucer or a tray when you're planning to grow anything inside. Here are the few of my favorite plants that do really well indoor and outdoor, because like I said earlier that it's kind of challenging to find plants that would thrive in a small space. That especially the more plants you grow, the more deeper the shade you're in. I don't have that kind of like indirect sun like under a 15 feet tall tree, a beautiful bright canopy, but it's more like in the shade. And because of this, I find out a lot of Asian herbs and greens, they thrive in these sort of environments. Like if you look at how deep the jungles are, and the trees, everything is just in quite deep shade. And so I find that those plants are so useful for these spaces. And what's also great is that these plants will also respond well in your indoors because they thrive in low light settings. So the first one I want to introduce to you is called Jiao Fulan. It's also known as the poor man's ginseng, if you've heard of, because of the adaptogens, helps reduce stress. It's a vine that's very beautiful and delicate looking. You can eat the leaves. You can also harvest them. I harvest them fresh when they're in season. They thrive in the warmer time. They also go dormant for me, so it is really great to have this, just bring it inside and let them keep growing, just by the window. And I make tea out of them. I can even munch them in the garden, just a few leaves here and there when I'm, passing through. It's like my morning, when you drink your coffee or your tea, that's what I go for. And it has this kind of slight bitter, but also like sweet aftertaste that lingers. So I feel like it really wakes you, it hydrates me in the morning. Steep that fresh leaves in the water, and it just, it's really nice. It just feels really comfortable. It wakes me up. You can also dry them while you have them, to harvest. So they go dormant in the winter, or you bring it inside, like I said. And so this is one that grows really well in the shade. Or if you have intense sunlight, keep them away from afternoon sun. From where I'm from, we have intense afternoon sun. So morning sun, indirect sun, full shade, this plant would thrive. And it's really beautiful even as a hanging basket in one of the shady corners. Or grow them as a ground cover, living mulch. Shade off grow them with your hydrangeas or, different shade-loving plants. They're really fast growing too once they get started. This one, the water hyssop, it's called Epicova. This is it's kind of more of a bitter herb, but it's also another one of those trailing herbs. I really enjoy this one. This is super fast growing. I dug some of this up so I can put it out on display in the exhibit hall. And I did this, I think, 2.5 weeks ago, and they were rooting already, and the plant was stable enough for me to transport. So it's a very fast growing herb as long as you kind of give it warmth and some light, morning sun, or I had an undergrow light that did increase this, speed up its growth. This one thrives in this more moist environment. So if you have even a pond or in a fish tank, so you can do like a more aquatic kind of like aquaponics. You can plant it in the garden. You need damp spots, low spots. You can have these as a ground cover. They're edible. They're a little bitter, but they are you can even find supplements of this herb. They help with your focus, your memory. So I like munching on this, once in a while in the garden, and just find different types of medicinal herbs and just apply them in my daily life as food rather than medicine. And this is one that's also has these beautiful little delicate flowers, and I love having them as like a cascading effect. If you want to do like an edible floral kind of like a plant arrangement in your pots, these grow so fast. And you can always trim them back to eat. This is another one I really love just because it's very ornamental, but it's also edible. Magenta plant is, you're thinking what about it makes it magenta? Well, the flower is the color of magenta. And we also use this as a natural food coloring for rice and pastry. It grows really well in bright light setting as well. This one probably takes a little more sun than the other ones I showed you, but it also thrives well in a very bright indirect sun. So this makes it another perfect plant for the indoor, and it looks beautiful. It has these silver kind of sheen and striped design. You can see the patterns on the leaves. And it grows upright, so you can just kind of trim it back and kind of make more compact growing. And it does need a little bit of support. The stems are a little weak, but it's really easy to root these sort of plants and just have multiples of them. And I like having more of these because they're really fun. The purple rice is, so how you extract is you just pick some little leaves, and you don't even need that many leaves, just a little handful. I can make a pretty good batch, like a saucepan of extracts. You literally you either boil it in water, and that's the quickest way to extract that purple color. Or if you just kind of sit it in cold water, so you're like doing a cold brew if you don't want to cook anything, right? It's just slower. Or sitting out, in a pitcher in the sun by the window. You can also extract that way, but this is the fastest way to extract. And the longer you let it sit, the deeper the purple will get. And that's how I get, this is one of the very traditional Vietnamese practices where they make these sweet rice dessert. They would first soak it in there overnight, and then you steam the rice. And so that's the purple. I know a lot of us like to use beets as a coloring, which is beautiful. I think beets also, it may look similar, the color, but if you start applying them in the flour to work with in your batter or your rice, it actually has more of a reddish. It's more like a pink, but this one gives you more of a purple, blue, lavender color. And this doesn't smell like beets. Like I love beets and I love pickled beets and roasted beets, but sometimes it has that root and that vegetable smell. This one has it's more mild than that. So this is good for to use for desserts. Or just have more fun with it, kind of like your butterfly pea for your blue water. You can just drink this for the anthocyanin, for the purple. So now we're talking about growing indoors. I would like to share with you, you can do windows on the windowsill, or you can have actually more proper setup so that you can increase the vitality of the plants, have them grow faster, because growing it inside is going to be slower than outdoors, no matter what, even if you had a perfect setup. But it definitely helps to speed it up. And so the setup you would need would just be as simple as just lights, a small fan. Fan's crucial for air circulation, otherwise you're going to have a lot of problems with diseases. And it also helps to strengthen the plants, the roots, just to kind of, you're trying to mimic it to be as close to the outdoor environment as possible. Shelf or table, depends on how much you want to scale this. Adjustable straps I find to be very helpful. It's not necessary, but just because when you're starting things from seed, you want them to be very close to the seedlings, like just a few inches away from the seedlings. And as the plant grows up, you want to adjust the light to kind of move it up. So adjustable straps seems to be it's very useful. I get a bit annoyed having to, mess with it every time. And reflectors, find aluminum foil or some kind of reflector, or have like a white background just for, bouncing the lights really helps to give your plants, just creating a brighter setting. So what I have here is a shelf, and I got that kind of a foil. It's for indoor or growing space, and I wrapped it all around so that I wouldn't lose any of the light. And I have a little fan on. That is a grow light. But you do have two options, usually if you're growing just from smaller, just leafy greens. If you plan on just maintaining the plant but not looking for the plants to grow into a mature plant, you can get away with just shop lights just when you're starting things from seed. And if you have sun outside, if there's sun in your garden, you can start them from seed inside and bring them outside. But for me, I need to get the plants to be quite big because there's not enough light to be planting smaller baby plants outside. So I rely a lot on getting these things started indoors and having proper grow lights. So if you're looking to have plants to actually mature, develop, and produce flowers and fruits, look into getting grow lights. These are some specs. I'm not an expert at this. I just kind of follow these specs to match up when I'm looking for grow lights, in case you guys are interested in looking for grow lights. Make sure they are within that range, the 5,000 and 7,000 Kelvin. Because you want all that, the blue, the red, and the whites or clear color to mimic as close to the sun as possible for that leafy greens, that growth. Otherwise your plants are going to stress, and they're going to stretch, and they're going to be weak, and it's just going to cause more issues, and it'll be slower for them to adapt when you bring them outside. Yeah, as I was talking about, the general guidelines for growing is to keep them just within a few inches of the plants. And this doesn't matter as much when you're growing it, when the plants get bigger, but when they're seedlings, you want them to be really close and just get as bright as possible. That's why it's almost impossible for me to start outdoors. And you want to give it at least 14 to 16 hours of sun. And they still require a little bit of rest, so 6 to 8 hours of darkness, just when you go to set the timer, when you go to bed, the plants will go to bed at the same time. And to prevent damping off, I've mentioned before, always water from the tray, bottled water, and keeping the fan on for the good airflow. I find that feeding it doesn't matter what you feed it. Of course, there are certain products that works better than others, but that would really help to strengthen the plants, like the root growth. I've done testings where I have one with just, using water, but the runoff happens so fast when you're growing things in pots that they need that nutrients. They'll grow, but then when you put them side by side, that's more vibrant. The plants are more sturdy. They're just stronger plants when you apply. Like I just use worm casting, tea and dilute it in water it once every couple of weeks. And when I took it out, I was using like a wicking system. So when I pulled it out, the roots were going crazy compared to the one that I was just using water. So if you wanted to feed it long term indoors, I highly suggest adding some kind of organic solution. Here are some signs of stress that you can look for. Stretching usually means they lack light. They're literally just trying to stretch and reach for the light, really. Yellowing, this one might be a little tricky, but either low nutrients or overwatering, but the next thing to do is just stick your finger in and really do the testing. Especially when you're going inside, I think that's really helpful to know when's the next time I should water. Usually the plants would produce some sort of stress when there's like start to have like a color build up. But that color actually is really good for you to help you combat stress when you eat something like that. And wilting. Wilting can actually also be over or underwater design. So again, just go back to picking, testing with your finger. If you want to continue on with gardening indoors, I would say grow some dwarf fruits like these orange hats or microtons. They're really tasty, they're fast growing, they're a little slower indoors, but say if you still have more time and you want to start them, say now, I don't know when your first frost date is, but you can actually start your first batch outside and let them grow to, before the frost date you take it in. So you have a head start, and then you can do succession planting and grow them indoors. So you can always just have this rotating of having some fresh tomatoes for your salads. It's obviously not going to be as much as you were growing a garden, but it's always really nice to add a little bit of fresh, onto your plates. And these big tomatoes, they would just come back over and over and just keep producing. So you don't actually need to succession plant that much, especially if you feed them with nutrients. Otherwise, they do slow down. And when I said the crops take 2 to 3 times as long to grow, that's if you just have it on the windowsill. If you want to boost it with a grow light, it would be faster. But yes, they do take a little longer to grow inside. You can also grow leafy greens. I don't know if you've seen at the exhibit hall, even just in a container, you can still have a really big cabbage growing out of that. So container gardening is, you still can have quite a big lush plant with that. You've seen here, I have this 2-inch pot and I'm able to grow a head of lettuce. So that's not the ideal size for it, but I was kind of pushing it just to see what happens. And I even had one that I didn't even thin out the sowing. I just kind of let them all grow on that second picture. And they're fine, especially if you just kind of treat them like baby, salad greens, put them away. So if you don't have that much space, you just have like a little table or a tray, you can have multiples of these pots and you can just go back and keep harvesting. Yeah, so about 4 to 6 inches pots then would be more ideal. I was kind of pushing it, like I said, about 2 inches, but it's still possible. But if you are looking to grow things like Swiss chard, amaranth, or something with more kale with more deeper taproot, then look for deeper pots. But they can grow pretty big even in the pot. It's more about the light and the soil and how you fertilize or add nutrients to your soil. If you're looking for citrus, the calamansi and the kumquats are really good. They can grow into big trees, but they respond really well, and they can be quite compact, growing in a pot. If you have a small plant, you can kind of start them out at like 5 gallon, move them up slowly. But even up to like a 15 gallon, you can have a 7 feet tall tree in your house. Calamansi is something in Asia we use a lot of, or called calamandine is also the other name for it, the top picture. It's more sour than the kumquat. This fruit, if you like really sour tart fruits, you can eat it as a fruit, but we mostly use this as for sauces. You can make jams out of it. It's got a lot of pectin. It is an orange or a citrus, so in the rind. What we also do is to candy them. It's really fragrant. I love adding just like popping 1 or 2 of those in my juices. And it really helps to brighten the smell of it. You can also use the leaves, use it as an herb. These things grow so well in a container. There are people in Sweden that are growing on by the windowsill and they would still flower. They're great. They're also called a 4-season citrus in Chinese because they really just grow year-round in the warmer climates. The second one, the kumquat. Kumquat is one that thrives better in the cold, actually. So if you're looking for something that's more cold hardy, it's still too cold out here, you have to bring it indoors, but this is one of those plants that you can bring in later than other plants because they can endure the cold longer. And if you do see that the leaves do fall off, don't stress about it because they actually are somewhat semi-deciduous. That's just their way of conserving energy so they just don't get affected by the cold. So, and kumquat has a really kind of like a sweet, fragrant rind that's more edible. So kumquat is more like a fruit that you can just pop and eat as a fruit. You can also use it, in your cooking, in your salads, and your dressings, just like the calamandine. But this one has a more palatable for treating as a fruit. Yeah, it was interesting when I found out that kumquats are actually a hybrid of a mandarin, and that's why you kind of get that really bright citrus smell, but they kind of look like a mini orange. Mine can get that as big as a tangerine, so that's kind of rare. But when you see those, you can kind of really see how they relate, like how they're actually bred that way from crossing. And these are so good in as lemonades. And different juices I've mentioned. We like adding these to different like cane juices. Really helps to brighten the smell. And this is one of the candy things we like to do when you remove the juice and just use that rind to candy. We can add a little bit of licorice root to it or different kind of herbs and powderize it and mix it in. And the juice of this, it's interesting because even though it doesn't taste, it's actually not as acidic as lemon juice, but if I left something that's kind of rusty or has like that calcium buildup from the hard water in my kitchenware, the juice of this removes that better than lemon or lime juices. So sometimes if I have abundance of this, because this grows year-round on the tree, so I can save the juice, freeze it, and take those ice cubes out, make drinks out of it, or clean my kitchen. You can also use the rind, sit it in some oil to extract and make yourself little tinctures, and they are so good to remove grease. I love when there's multiple uses out of one plant, and they're delicious. The kumquat is one of those that, as I mentioned, that they're more like a fruit rather than for cooking. They're really good for your throat. So when you have sore throat or you're trying to remove like phlegm, things like that, we use this and like cumin oregano to kind of make a really nice herbal tea with it. And it just seems to really help with your sore throat and coughs. They are definitely one of the harder ones, so you can bring them inside later, but bring them outside earlier, so you always have an earlier start with these kind of plants. And being semi-dormant, but still, if that wouldn't happen, if you're going to bring it inside to grow before the freeze, before the frost. If you're interested in these, I think Baker Creek offers them in the spring at some point. So this is one of them that's fruit tree that you can grow inside as well as outside. Now, if you're looking for something a little more easy to grow, look into microgreens. They only take 7 to or a few days to a few weeks to grow, depending on what kind of vegetables you want to grow, and they are really nutritious, right? And for some of you who think you've never had microgreens, I bet you have. I bet you have. I call these wild microgreens. They're actually your volunteers. Have you seen just a bunch that just sow in the garden when you have plants that flop over, the seeds that just sow in the garden, you pull them out? Or you're thinning out your carrots or radishes when you sow them, direct sow. Those are your microgreens. You can clip those or pull them up. They're really nutritious. They're 4 to 20 times as powerful, as nutritious as the plant itself, a mature plant. And they're really tender. These are red amaranth that you're looking at. I have abundance of them. They germinate so easily. The fun thing about microgreens is that you can get really playful and fun and play with, with your kids and with a tray, with recycling these kind of containers. With what I have here is just a container with different dividers. So I started putting different types of seeds in there to grow different colors. It'd be kind of a fun piece to take to a party. I don't know, a conversational piece, and it's healthy. You kind of clip your own and put in your crackers or, in your cheeses or whatnot. And what I usually do is use coco coir, but any kind of potting mix will do, actually. Just make sure you do need drainage, so you can find a container, drill some holes in the bottom, and have a tray under, because you don't want to top water, especially these that are growing so densely. They are going to damp off and rot really easily. So you want to always bottom water. Microgreens, the great thing about them is that instead of using this much space, you can do it this much space, or you can grow it in just a little bowl or your small little pots. It's really, the only difference about growing microgreens is direct sowing, like sowing on top. So you got your regular gardening, you got soil in the bottom layer, second layer is seeds, and then a layer of soil in third. This one, microgreens, 2 steps. Soil, seed, done. And they're so fast, they grow so quickly. You can put them near the windowsill as well. It won't grow as fast or as vibrant as having grow lights or even shop lights. Actually, shop lights would be enough for growing microgreens. The plants doesn't need that much energy to push them any bigger. By the time they get to that first true leaf is the time to harvest. You can harvest before that as well, but yeah, if you let them grow any longer than that, it's going to get really tough. The stems are going to start to harden. It's just not as pleasurable.
Longer than what? I'm sorry.
Longer than when you're growing them. The first true leaf that comes, that's pretty much the cutoff point you should be harvesting. Yeah, they're going to start to get tough. They are developing into the more mature, it's a plant rather than a seedling. Yeah. So certain plants would require soaking and some do not, but you can see that there's a lot of different things that you can grow microgreens out of. It's not the few that you find in the grocery store or the farmers markets. Pretty much you can grow anything with microgreens, right? You use seeds, but certain ones you get a lot more seeds of and they germinate faster, so it just makes more sense. But you can soak them in between 4 to 12 hours. Certain seeds, require a little longer soaking. They'll tell you the directions, if you're looking for those seeds. But what's great is if you have a lot of those seeds sitting there, or save some of those seeds, you can grow your own microgreens. So you're always continue the cycle of producing, reproducing, and harvesting. Sunflower seeds, sunflower microgreens is one of my favorites. But you can see that there's a list there with the ones that require soaking. You don't have to soak it first, but it really helps to speed up the germination. Because this is all about production, efficiency, hurry, cut and grow. You can grow an amount that's enough for you to feed you, to nourish you. Then, when you're growing indoor microgreens, you can grow trays of them in a shelf and have plenty of food. Basically, when I first sow them, it really does speed up the process, but it depends on what type. Like red amaranth is a little slower. Some that really does well in the heat setting, so I would put a grow mat, a heating mat under. just like if you're starting things from seeds, certain summer, heat loving, yeah, so same idea. So you're really applying what you already know, but you're just kind of harvesting them at an earlier stage of life. So it's really nothing new. It's actually even less work, I think. And yeah, so the blackout stage of growing microgreens is when you can allow them to reach. You actually want these to stretch. It's kind of weird. It's kind of thinking the opposite of how you want plants to grow outside. You don't want them to stretch. You want them to be more condensed and be very sturdy. But with these microgreens, you want them to be stretching a little bit so you have that height so you can clip them. You can clip them off to harvest. And always bottom watering. I can't stress that enough. And after you harvest them, those extras, you can always sit in the refrigerator. You put a little towel, a Ziploc bag, or just in a container. And as long as you keep them dry and they're in a cool environment, they'll actually go for like even a week, but it's safer to say, less than a week, 3 to 4 days long. As long as you keep them dry, so make sure you do have some sort of towel, something for it to absorb the moisture as they're producing when they're in the container. Here are a few of my favorites. Oh, a lot of us love growing sunflowers. So you definitely can save those seeds and have, you've got enough for you, for birds, and for next year. Yeah, for your friends, grow some microgreens. They're so nutty, they're delicious. One of my favorites. Peas as well, sweet peas, any kind of pea shoots, harvest them early like that, or in Chinese they have this dish with like this sauteed garlic, so they actually cooked pea shoots. Just a quick stir fry with some garlic or salt and pepper. Yeah, it's really delicious. It's so tender, more tender than, it's just so delicate. Imagine thinking of microgreens and you're cooking that like really quickly. And with red cabbage, it's so beautiful to add any kind of color into your food. It's actually nutrients, but it's so festive. And they're easy to grow. And look how dense you can actually sow them and have enough to harvest. This is I think it was a mango salad that I threw some of these shoots and the purple cabbage in there with that is a kumquat sauce I did with it. So those are really bright for summer. You can also harvest with peas. You can wait for them to have that first kind of like tendril. That's when it's time to harvest them. They do get tough after that. If that happens, blend it, strain it, I guess turn it into a juice. Mix it with some other thing, kind of a pineapple juice or something, so you can still use it. Sunflower, one of my favorite salads to make, especially this time of year. We have pomegranates in season and persimmons. Instead of using microgreens as part of like the sprinkles in the salad, let it be the base. Let it replace your lettuce, and other greens. If you grow enough, you can actually be generous, And I made this, it was a really thick garlic miso dressing with it that I made some pineapple juice for it and mixed it in. So it was like really fruity, bright, and kind of went with the. Here are a few ones you may not notice. I just had a bunch of nasturtium microgreens in the garden actually, because they were just, a lot of them just fell in the garden and they just germinated. And those are your microgreens. I didn't have to grow them. But nasturtiums, yeah, they grow those. They also grow corn. There was one time corn was one of those they love them because they're actually really sweet. They're almost like sweet like sugar, or stevia leaves. They taste just like that. So you can savor those extra corn and do your popcorns and such. And of course, don't forget about your animals. You can grow wheatgrass for them. And then sprouts, if you're getting lazy. I'll take some questions at the end. With sprouts, if you're feeling even lazier, you need a smaller amount of space. Just a jar will do. So cut out the soil, you just need the seeds. Just put the seeds down, make sure you're putting in going in a jar. And then make sure you just rinse it daily and drain it out. And you can make a beautiful salad with it. And that's the jar I highly recommend. It's kind of like a strainer. So you just kind of dump it and rinse it, and make sure you do that, especially the warmer the weather gets. You want to do that more frequently, or else it's really gonna smell.
Oh.
Yeah. So here are directions. You can take a picture of that if you like.
So thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you.